Ma'am, people like you don't belong anywhere near a piece like this, so I suggest you step away before I have security remove you. The words cut through the pristine air of the Luminary Gems flagship store like a shard of glass, sharp enough to make several nearby customers turn their heads. Before we get into what happened next, where are you watching from? Comment below. And if you believe everyone deserves dignity, subscribe and like. This story will leave you speechless. On a warm September morning in 2024, Miami's Wynwood district glowed with its usual blend of art, color, and quiet opulence. But Maya Johnson wasn't there for the galleries or the brunch spots. She pulled her aging 2004 Toyota Prius into the valet lot of the flagship store she had built from nothing. A store that generated $4 million in sales every single month. The valet, used to Bentleys and Lamborghinis, barely concealed his confusion at the sight of the modest car, glancing between the worn steering wheel and the polished glass doors of Luminary Gems. Maya, 44 years old, wore a simple navy blazer, black slacks, and around her neck, the one piece of jewelry she never took off, a delicate silver locket her grandmother had given her on her 18th birthday. A reminder of her beginnings in a small Atlanta neighborhood where dreams were bigger than the bank accounts that tried to hold them back. What no one in that store realized was that the woman stepping inside had taken Luminary Gems from a tiny workshop in Atlanta to a $300 million empire with 55 stores across 18 states. Her designs gracing red carpets and magazine covers around the world. Maya believed in showing up unannounced to see how her vision was being lived out on the ground. Luxury that welcomed everyone, not just those who looked the part. Today, she intended to blend in as a regular customer, to observe without interference. She stepped into the cool, perfumed air of the store, noting the marble floors that caught the light, the crystal chandeliers that framed the space, and the gleaming glass case that housed the crown jewel of this location, the $2.5 million Celestial Collection. She moved closer, her eyes settling on the $45,000 necklace she herself had designed, a cascade of platinum and rare blue diamonds set with precision so fine that even the smallest flaw would be visible to a trained eye. Before she could even lean closer, Vanessa Reed, the 41-year-old store manager, intercepted her path. Vanessa's smile was tight, her tone saccharine but edged. "Can I help you?" she asked, scanning Maya from head to toe, her gaze lingering on the car keys in Maya's hand. "Yes," Maya replied evenly. "I'd like to see the celestial necklace." Vanessa's eyes flicked to the piece, then back to Maya, and the polite mask slipped just enough for her voice to flatten. "That's a premium piece, starting at $450,000. Perhaps I could show you something from our entry-level line. Something more suitable." Maya's fingers tightened slightly on her locket, but her expression didn't change. "No," she said. "I want to see that necklace. In the back office. Claudia Pierce, the 37-year-old regional director, noticed the interaction on the security monitors. Claudia, ambitious and image-obsessed, believed her role was to protect the brand from what she called misalignment, and in her mind, Maya's modest appearance was a red flag. She stepped onto the floor, her heels clicking against the marble, and joined Vanessa. "Is there a problem?" she asked coolly, positioning herself as an enforcer. "We reserve pieces like this for serious buyers," she added, eyes narrowing ever so slightly at Maya. "I am serious," Maya answered, her voice calm but unyielding. Vanessa reluctantly retrieved the key to the display, but made a show of unlocking the case slowly, her body angled as if guarding the necklace from potential harm. As Maya leaned in, her trained eye caught it instantly. One of the prongs holding a diamond was uneven. "The prongs on the center stone aren't perfectly aligned," she remarked. Vanessa let out a short, dismissive laugh. "Our jewelers are world-class," she said, the edge in her voice sharpening. "You must be mistaken. Nearby, Noah Carter, the 29-year-old assistant manager with an MBA and a quiet hope of one day running his own store, watched from behind the counter. He could sense the tension, but hesitated, knowing that challenging Vanessa could cost him his job. Emily Harper, a 25-year-old sales associate with dreams of becoming a designer, lingered a few feet away, her stomach twisting at the sight of the interaction but fearing the same consequences. James Holt, the 48-year-old security guard and former firefighter, shifted his stance by the door, his instincts telling him something was wrong, but his orders clear. "Follow management's lead." The store's door chimed, and in walked the Langleys, a wealthy white couple who were longtime customers. In an instant, Vanessa's demeanor transformed, her voice warmed, her smile broadened, and she offered them champagne without hesitation. Claudia stepped in to flatter their sophisticated taste and escorted them to a private seating area. Maya, still standing by the display, was left alone. She overheard Vanessa murmur to Claudia, "We can't let just anyone near the celestial pieces." The words landed like a slap, cold and unmistakable, for the next 25 minutes. Vanessa and Claudia fawned over the Langleys, offering them unrestricted access to the very pieces they had guarded so tightly from Maya, all without a single request for proof of funds or credentials. Maya stood silently, her patience wearing thinner with every passing second, the weight of the moment pressing against her chest. This wasn't just about a necklace anymore. It was about every time she had been looked at and quietly dismissed. Every door that had been closed before she could step through. Every assumption made about her worth based on nothing but the color of her skin and the simplicity of her clothes. But what Vanessa and Claudia didn't know, what they couldn't even begin to imagine, was that Maya Johnson was the one person in the world they could not afford to treat this way. Maya held her ground, the air between her and Vanessa thick with the kind of tension that made other customers glance over, unsure if they were witnessing a minor disagreement or the start of something bigger. Her voice was calm but firm as she spoke again. "I'd still like to see the celestial necklace up close." Vanessa's polite veneer was gone now, replaced by open annoyance. "What's the occasion?" she asked, her tone clipped, as though trying to expose a flaw in Maya's reasoning. "Does it matter?" Maya replied evenly, locking eyes with her. Vanessa didn't answer. Instead, she glanced at Claudia, who had been circling like a hawk, ready to swoop in. Claudia stepped closer, her presence exuding authority meant to intimidate. "We have to be careful with pieces of that value," she said, her voice smooth but edged with condescension. "We can't have them handled by just anyone. We reserve them for serious buyers." Maya's jaw tightened. "And I told you, I am a serious buyer." Claudia's eyes flicked over Maya's blazer, her locket, her keys, and the faintest smirk touched her lips. "Sometimes," she said, lowering her voice as if sharing a private truth, "people overestimate what's realistic for them." Vanessa chuckled softly at that, emboldened by Claudia's presence, and finally unlocked the display. Lifting the necklace with exaggerated care, she didn't place it on the counter as she would for a favored client. Instead, she held it herself, keeping the distance between the necklace and Maya just enough to make it clear she didn't fully trust her. Maya leaned forward, her designer's eye catching every facet, and again she noted, "The center stone's prongs are uneven. It needs to be reset." Vanessa's lips pressed into a thin line. "I assure you, there's nothing wrong with it," she said, her voice firm. "Our jewelers are the best in the business." Maya straightened and didn't reply, but the quiet confidence in her expression seemed to unsettle Vanessa. Across the room, Noah Carter shifted uneasily behind the counter, He had worked under Vanessa long enough to know that her exclusive client act was more about personal prejudice than brand protection, but saying that out loud could cost him his career. Emily Harper, meanwhile, stood a few steps away, her heart pounding as she watched. She could feel the injustice in her chest like a weight, but Vanessa's sharp glares kept her rooted to the spot. James Holt, by the door, had seen his share of tense situations, but this one was different. There was no immediate danger, just a quiet, grinding cruelty that was harder to call out. Then the door chimed again, and the Langleys stepped inside. In an instant, Vanessa transformed, her posture relaxed, her voice warmed, and she swept toward them as though greeting royalty. Mr. and Mrs. Langley. "What a pleasure," she said, her tone almost unrecognizable from the one she'd used on Maya. Claudia joined her, gushing about their impeccable taste and steering them toward the same display case, without hesitation. Vanessa offered them champagne and seating, and within seconds, the celestial necklace was in Mrs. Langley's hands. No questions asked, no proof of funds required. Maya watched it unfold, her stomach twisting, not from envy, but from the sharp, familiar sting of knowing she was being judged not for her worth, but for her skin and her appearance. The Langleys glanced over briefly, curiosity flickering in their eyes, but said nothing. Vanessa, catching their look, leaned toward Claudia and whispered, just loud enough for Maya to hear. "We can't let just anyone near the celestial pieces." Claudia smirked in agreement. The words hit Maya like a slap, though her face remained still. For 25 minutes, she stood there, a silent witness to their fawning over the Langleys, offering them everything she had been denied. She listened as they spoke about upcoming galas, as Vanessa praised Mrs. Langley's incredible eye for detail, as Claudia promised to set aside certain pieces just for them. All the while, Maya stayed put, her mind replaying the countless times in her life she'd been made to wait, made to prove herself, made to feel like an outsider in spaces she had earned her place in 1,000 times over. Noah avoided looking directly at her, guilt gnawing at him. Emily's grip tightened on the stack of brochures in her hands, wishing she had the courage to step forward. James stood straighter, his instincts urging him to do something, but the chain of command was clear, and right now, the chain was in the wrong hands. Maya felt the clock ticking, each second a test of her patience. She had come here hoping to observe quietly, to see the store through a customer's eyes. But what she had seen instead was a rot at the core. A rot that, if left unchecked, could spread through the brand she had built with her own 2 hands. She thought of the young designers she mentored, of the customers who saved for months to buy a single piece from Luminary Gems, of the brand's stated commitment to luxury for all, words now mocked by the scene before her. As Vanessa and Claudia laughed lightly with the Langleys, Maya's resolve hardened. She wasn't going to walk out quietly. She wasn't going to let this pass. And she certainly wasn't going to let Vanessa Reed or Claudia Pierce dictate who was worthy of Luminary Gems. Not in her store. Not in her company. Maya let the 25th minute pass before she moved, her steps deliberate as she closed the distance between herself and Vanessa, cutting directly into the conversation with the Langleys. "I'm still interested in the celestial necklace," she said, her voice steady but carrying enough weight to silence the small talk. Vanessa turned slowly, her smile fading into a look of irritation that she didn't bother to hide. "That piece," she said, her tone sharp, "requires a serious financial commitment. Try the clearance section. It's more in line with what you're looking for." Claudia, sensing an opportunity to reinforce the slight, added with a thin smile, "We prioritize clients who fit our brand's image." The meaning was clear, and it was meant to sting. Maya didn't flinch. "I want to purchase the necklace," she replied evenly. "The $450,000 one." Vanessa's laugh was short and mocking, designed to humiliate in front of the Langleys. We'll need proof of funds, bank statements, a credit card, something to prove you're not wasting our time. Claudia folded her arms, nodding. Standard policy for high-value items. Maya glanced toward the Langleys, who were sipping champagne and chatting, untouched by such demands. Is it standard for them? She asked. Her eyes locked on Vanessa. Yes. Vanessa lied without hesitation. The boutique's atmosphere shifted. The low hum of background music seemed to fade as customers began paying more attention. A few had their phones out now, pretending to browse but clearly recording. Emily stepped forward from her spot near the stockroom door, her voice quiet but resolute. I can assist, Ms. she began, only to be cut off by Claudia's sharp bark. Emily, stockroom, now! The younger woman froze, the weight of the command pressing her backward, but the flash of defiance in her eyes didn't go unnoticed by Maya. James shifted by the entrance, his jaw tightening as Vanessa turned on him. James, she snapped, escort her out, or you're fired. Claudia piled on without missing a beat, her voice cold. Do it, or I'll report you to corporate. James hesitated, his hand instinctively brushing the radio on his belt, his sense of right clashing with the chain of command. Maya stood rooted, her voice low and firm. I'm not leaving. Vanessa's face reddened. This is my store, and I decide who stays and who doesn't. Maya tilted her head slightly, her calm in sharp contrast to the heat in Vanessa's voice. Is that so? She said quietly. Then she reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out her phone, holding it casually but with purpose. Call security if you want, she continued. But first, I'll make a call. Claudia scoffed openly, gesturing toward the phone. Who are you calling? Your lawyer? Maya's lips curled into the faintest smile. Something like that, she said. The small crowd of customers shifted, phones lifting a little higher. The tension was palpable now, the kind that makes people hold their breath without realizing it. Vanessa glanced at Claudia, who gave a small, dismissive shrug. She's bluffing. Claudia muttered under her breath, but even as she said it, there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Noah had inched closer to Emily, whispering something that made her eyes widen. Emily's hand went instinctively to her phone, but she didn't lift it. James was no longer pretending to be neutral. His gaze was fixed on Maya, waiting. Maya's thumb hovered over her phone screen for a moment before she pressed the call button. The tone was casual, but the energy behind it was electric. Emma, she said when the line picked up. It's Maya Johnson. I need you to convene an emergency board meeting. Now, I'm standing in our Wynwood flagship, and I'm watching a gross violation of our values unfold in real time. Discrimination, harassment, everything we claim to stand against, happening right here, right now. Vanessa's head jerked slightly at the name. Claudia's brows drew together. Maya Johnson? Vanessa repeated, her voice suddenly unsure. Maya met her gaze evenly. Yes, she said. That's me. The quiet in the store deepened, the kind of silence that feels heavy. Someone near the back whispered, Wait, she owns the place? Claudia forced a laugh, but it sounded brittle. You're bluffing, she said again, though her tone lacked conviction now. Maya slid a small, elegant business card from her pocket and handed it to Vanessa. The manager's hands trembled as her eyes scanned the words. Maya Johnson, founder and CEO, Luminary Gems. Her skin went pale, her lips parting without sound. The air shifted again, the power in the room realigning like iron filings snapping toward a magnet. Maya didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Vanessa. Claudia. Tell me, she said. What are Luminary Gems' principles? Vanessa's mouth opened and closed before she stammered. Luxury, exclusivity, inclusion. Maya interrupted, her tone slicing clean through. Respect, excellence for all. Those are our principles. Not whatever you've been playing at today. Claudia's smirk faltered completely. The Langleys set their champagne flutes down quietly, clearly uncomfortable, and began edging toward the door. The customers who had been recording now angled for a better shot. Vanessa swallowed hard, her earlier confidence evaporating. Claudia's jaw was tight, but there was no fight in her eyes now, only the realization that they had overplayed their hand, and the fallout was already underway. Maya's phone was still in her hand, the board still listening on the other end of the line. She glanced briefly at Noah, then at Emily, then James, her gaze acknowledging the people who had chosen restraint over complicity. Then she turned back to the two women who had set this entire fire in motion. "You've made a choice today," she said evenly. "And now, so will I." The room seemed to contract around them, every eye on Maya, every phone camera fixed in her direction. As the quiet hum of the store's air system became the only background sound, Maya lifted her chin, her voice carrying without effort. "I am Maya Johnson, founder and CEO of Luminary Gems. I built this company from the ground up, starting in a rented workshop in Atlanta with nothing but a sketch pad and a belief that luxury should belong to everyone, not just those who fit someone else's idea of worthy. And today, in my own store, I have been treated as if I were nothing more than an intruder." Vanessa's knees seemed to buckle slightly, her manicured hands trembling so much she nearly dropped the business card she still clutched. Claudia's mouth opened to protest, but Maya raised one hand, an elegant, subtle gesture that commanded silence more effectively than any shout. "Vanessa, Claudia," she said evenly, "you've failed me, but worse, you've failed this brand, our customers, and our values. Tell me again what Luminary Gems stands for." Vanessa swallowed, her voice breaking. "Luxury, exclusivity." "Stop," Maya cut in, the single syllable sharp enough to make Vanessa flinch. "It's inclusion, respect, excellence for all. Words I have printed on the wall of every store. Words I have spoken at every launch. Words you apparently think don't apply when the customer standing in front of you doesn't fit your personal mold." A murmur rippled through the onlookers, some shaking their heads, others nodding, phones capturing every second. Emily's eyes widened, her hands gripping the brochures in front of her as though grounding herself in the moment. Noah had gone pale, his MBA-trained mind running ahead to the headlines this would generate. James stood straighter by the door, the weight of the moment written across his face. "While you were fawning over one couple, without asking them for proof of anything." Maya continued, her voice steady but cutting. "You spent nearly half an hour ignoring me, questioning me, insinuating that my worth as a customer was less than theirs. You demanded proof of funds. You threatened to throw me out of my own store." She let the words hang in the air, the weight of them settling like dust. Claudia tried to recover, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. "We were just protecting the brand." "No," Maya said, the steel in her tone brooking no interruption. "You were protecting your own biases. You were protecting an image that exists only in your mind, one that excludes more people than it welcomes, one that would destroy everything I've worked to build if it were allowed to take root here." The Langleys, clearly mortified, had set down their champagne flutes and were edging toward the exit. Mrs. Langley gave Maya a small, embarrassed nod before slipping out the door, her husband trailing behind her without a word. Vanessa's eyes darted toward them, as though their departure might offer a lifeline. But there was none to be found. Maya took a step closer, her presence towering without aggression. "Vanessa Reed, Claudia Pierce, you are both terminated, effective immediately. Your access to all company systems will be revoked within the hour. You will clear your desks today. Security will escort you out." Vanessa's breath hitched audibly, her carefully constructed composure shattering. "I didn't know," she began, but Maya held up her hand again. That's the problem. You didn't care to know. You didn't treat me with respect because you didn't think I deserved it. And if you can do that to me, you can do it to anyone who walks through those doors. That is unacceptable. Claudia's defiance faltered entirely now, her lips pressed into a thin, white line. You can't fire me, she snapped suddenly, the last flicker of pride trying to save face. I report to corporate. Maya's smile was cold, almost pitying. I am corporate. The collective gasp from the small crowd was almost audible over the click of Emily's phone as she captured the moment for herself. Vanessa's eyes welled, a single tear sliding down her cheek. But the pity she might have received from some found no home in Maya's gaze. Claudia looked away, her jaw tight, her breathing shallow. Emma, Maya said into her phone, please note for the record that the board has been informed of the terminations and supports the decision. A voice on the other end confirmed. Noted. Miss Johnson, we'll begin processing now. Maya ended the call and turned her attention to the remaining staff. Noah, you attempted to step in, even when it wasn't easy. That's leadership. Noah gave a small nod, relief mingling with guilt in his expression. Emily, you tried to help despite being told to step aside. That's courage. Emily blinked rapidly, her lips pressing together as she absorbed the words. James, you didn't follow an unjust order. That's integrity. James's shoulders squared, the faintest hint of a smile touching his face. These are the values I want in this company, Maya continued, sweeping her gaze across the room. Not fear, not prejudice, not arrogance disguised as professionalism. She turned back to the customers who had been filming. To everyone here, I apologize. This is not who we are, and I will not allow this behavior to stand in any of our stores. A man near the front, middle-aged, with salt and pepper hair, stepped forward. You handled this with grace, Ms. Johnson. More people need to see what leadership looks like. Maya inclined her head in thanks, her locket catching the light. Leadership, she said, is about accountability, especially when it's uncomfortable. The viral moment was already in motion. She could see the notifications lighting up screens around the room as customers posted clips, hashtags forming in real time. But for Maya, this wasn't about trending online. It was about protecting the soul of the company she had poured her life into. Vanessa and Claudia stood frozen for a moment longer before security, acting on quiet instructions from James, stepped forward. Neither woman protested now. The fight had left them. As they were led toward the back to collect their things, the eyes of every employee and customer followed, not with cruelty, but with the unmistakable awareness that something significant had just happened. Maya turned back to Noah, Emily, and James. We're not just selling jewelry here, she said quietly. We're selling trust. And once you lose that, there's no price in the world that can buy it back. The door to the back office clicked shut behind Vanessa and Claudia, and for the first time since Maya had entered the store, the air felt lighter, as if the tension had finally broken. She stood in the center of the boutique, the celestial collection glittering behind glass, and looked around at the faces that remained, some curious, some inspired, some still stunned. Let's be clear, she said, her tone calm but ringing with authority. This isn't just about 2 employees. This is about the standard we uphold, the example we set, and the trust our customers place in us. Her gaze settled on Noah first. Noah Carter, she said. I watched you hesitate, but I also saw you trying to find a way to step in without putting your job on the line. That shows instinct and potential for leadership. Effective immediately. You're the interim store manager. The words seemed to knock the air out of him. His mouth opened in surprise, then closed again as he nodded, a mix of relief and pride flashing across his face. Thank you. "Ms. Johnson," he said quietly, his voice thick. "Next." She turned to Emily. "Emily Harper," Maya continued. "You stepped forward when you saw wrong being done. Even though you were told to disappear into the stockroom, that kind of courage is what keeps a company like this alive. You're now the assistant manager, effective immediately." Emily's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes welling up. I don't know what to say," she stammered. "Say you'll keep speaking up," Maya replied with a faint smile. Emily nodded fiercely. Then Maya looked to James. "James Holt," she said. "You didn't follow an unjust order. That is integrity, and it matters here. You will receive a raise, effective this pay cycle, and a formal commendation in your file." James straightened, the set of his shoulders almost military, his voice low but firm. "Thank you. Ma'am, I won't let you down." Maya's gaze swept across the rest of the staff, making sure no one felt invisible. "We cannot sell a single piece of jewelry here if the experience we give people makes them feel less than. I built Luminary Gems so that a young woman in jeans and sneakers could walk in and be treated the same as a celebrity on the red carpet. That dream doesn't survive if we let prejudice take root. Today was a reminder, and we will learn from it." Several customers murmured in agreement, some clapping softly. One woman in a bright coral dress spoke up from near the back. "I've been shopping here for years, but today made me respect this brand more than ever. You didn't just talk about values. You showed them." Maya inclined her head in acknowledgement, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. The energy in the room was shifting from discomfort to resolve. Noah moved to the counter, taking over the space where Vanessa had stood moments earlier, his posture more open, more welcoming. Emily stepped beside him, her warmth immediately felt as she greeted a customer who had been lingering awkwardly. James resumed his position by the door, but now his stance was less guarded, more protective in the best sense. Maya walked over to the Celestial collection, her designer's eye instinctively noting the crooked display case she had spotted upon arrival. Without a word, she adjusted it herself, the small gesture symbolic, realigning not just the glass, but the vision behind it. She turned back to the room. "From this day forward," she said, "every person who walks through these doors will be served with the dignity they deserve, whether they arrive in a Bentley or a bus, in a ball gown or a t-shirt. They will be treated as valued guests. If anyone feels they can't uphold that, they should leave now." No one moved. The silence was an answer in itself. "Good," Maya said. "Then we start fresh. Today." The store began to hum again, this time with a different energy. Customers who had been pretending to browse earlier now approached the cases with renewed interest, some asking Emily or Noah to see pieces they had been too uncomfortable to request before. Phones were still recording, but the tone had shifted. Now it was about capturing the turnaround, the living example of a company reclaiming its values. Maya stepped aside to let her staff work, watching as Emily explained the craftsmanship of a diamond bracelet to a young couple, or as Noah handled a delicate pendant with care. She noticed James quietly holding the door for an elderly man on his way out, thanking him for visiting. Every action was deliberate, thoughtful, a reflection of the message she had just delivered. The incident had already gone viral. She could feel it in the way customers were looking at their phones, whispering to one another. But Maya knew that online attention was fleeting. What mattered was what happened here tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day until Luminary Gem's name stood for the same respect she carried in her heart. The sound of a notification pinged on her phone, and she saw a message from Emma. "Clips are already trending under #LuminaryJustice. Media requests are coming in. Do you want to comment?" Maya typed back quickly, "Yes." Statement. "At Luminary Gems, respect is non-negotiable. Every customer deserves dignity. Today, we made that clear." She slipped the phone back into her blazer and glanced once more at the display case. The $45,000 necklace caught the light, its central diamond still flawed by that uneven prong. She made a mental note to have it fixed, not just because it was her design, but because it symbolized the precision she expected from every corner of her company. In that moment, she knew the lesson of the day had been far bigger than one sale or one necklace. It was about the trust that bound her brand to the people who walked through those doors, and she was determined that trust would never be broken again. By the time Vanessa and Claudia had been escorted completely out of the building, the Wynwood flagship no longer felt like the same store Maya had walked into that morning. The air, once thick with unspoken tension, was now charged with a sense of renewal. Maya stood near the center of the sales floor, taking in the hum of genuine interaction. Emily's laughter as she explained the origin of a rare sapphire ring to a customer. Noah's steady professionalism as he helped a couple choose an anniversary gift. James's quiet vigilance at the entrance, greeting each guest with a nod that made them feel safe and welcome. The shift was palpable, and Maya knew it wasn't just about replacing two people, it was about recalibrating the store's heartbeat. She stepped forward, addressing both the staff and the customers who were still lingering after the drama they'd witnessed. "I want to make something clear," she began, her voice calm but carrying to every corner of the boutique. "Today isn't just about firing two employees. It's about making sure everyone here understands exactly what Luminary Gems stands for. We are not in the business of selling to a select few. We are in the business of making every single customer feel valued, respected, and welcome. That starts now, and it starts with each of you." Her eyes moved deliberately from one employee to the next, making sure they felt the weight of her words. "We will be implementing inclusivity and service training across all 55 of our stores. Starting here, Noah will lead this location through that process, and Emily will serve as his right hand." The customers who had been pretending to browse earlier now stood openly listening, some nodding, some recording her speech for their social media feeds. Maya knew those clips would travel fast. She welcomed it. The truth was, she wanted the world to see what accountability looked like, not just the removal of the problem, but the rebuilding that followed. She walked to the Celestial Collection display, adjusting the same slightly crooked case she had noticed earlier. "Details matter," she said, more to herself than anyone else. But the words carried, "It's not just about the jewelry. It's about how we present ourselves, how we treat people, and how we uphold our promises." Noah stepped forward hesitantly. "Ms. Johnson, what about the media? They're going to call—" "Probably already are." Maya's expression was steady. "We'll let them see exactly what happened here. We have nothing to hide. Let the world see what happens when a company stands by its values." Emily, who had been helping an older woman try on a bracelet, glanced up and asked, "Do you want me to start posting the statement on our store's official account?" Maya gave a small nod. "Yes. And include this. At Luminary Gems, respect is non-negotiable. Every customer deserves dignity. Today, we made that clear." James shifted at the door, glancing down at his phone. "Ma'am, #Luminary Justice is already trending. Videos from earlier are getting hundreds of thousands of views in minutes." Maya didn't look surprised. "Good," she said simply. "Let it spread. But we're not chasing views. We're proving a point. Around them." The store continued to function, but with an entirely different energy. Customers approached cases without hesitation now, even those who had been lingering in the corners before. Conversations flowed more easily, smiles came naturally, and the shadow of the earlier incident began to lift. Maya watched as Emily helped a teenager pick out a pendant within her budget, treating her with the same attentiveness she'd give to someone buying a six-figure piece. That was the culture Maya wanted, and she intended to make it permanent. She stepped toward James, lowering her voice. I want you to train every new security hire on not just safety, but service. They're the first and last face customers see. They set the tone. James nodded firmly. Consider it done. The clock ticked past noon, and while business had slowed slightly from the morning rush, Maya could see the sales team was energized rather than drained. Noah approached with a small velvet box in hand. This was reserved for a client. But I thought you should see it. It's one of the newer designs. Maya took the box, opening it to reveal a delicate diamond choker with a subtle floral motif. Beautiful work, she said softly. Who designed it? Emily, Noah replied, his voice low. She showed me the sketches months ago, but Vanessa never submitted them up the chain. Maya's brows lifted slightly. Then she closed the box and handed it back. We'll change that. Have her send the full portfolio to my office by the end of the week. Her mind was already moving ahead, to design meetings, training rollouts, brand-wide communication. But she knew this day, this moment in the Wynwood store, would serve as a defining chapter in Luminary Gems' history. She glanced toward the door, where James was politely turning away a man trying to enter with a video camera. Not all attention was good attention, Maya knew, but as long as they controlled their own narrative, they could withstand the noise. The incident wasn't going away. It would live online forever, dissected by strangers and amplified by headlines. But Maya understood something Vanessa and Claudia never had. What you do after the mistake matters more than the mistake itself. As she looked around at her team, she felt the satisfaction of knowing that the people in this store now reflected the values she had built her career on. The crooked display case was straightened. The customers were smiling, and the energy in the air was one of possibility, not prejudice. This was the reset she had come for, even if it wasn't the one she'd planned, and she was determined to make it count. As the sun dipped low over Miami's Wynwood district, the boutique's glass storefront reflected the warm amber light, casting a golden glow over the Celestial Collection display that had been at the center of so much conflict just hours earlier. Maya stood before it now, her gaze fixed not on the $45,000 necklace itself, but on the tiny flaw she'd noticed that morning, the uneven prong holding the center diamond. It was small, almost imperceptible to anyone else. But to her, it symbolized everything she'd confronted today. A single flaw that, if left unchecked, could compromise the integrity of the whole. She reached up, fingers lightly grazing her grandmother's silver locket, the cool metal a grounding reminder of where she'd started, in her mind. She could hear her grandmother's voice, steady, unwavering, telling her that true worth is never determined by what people see on the surface, but by the character they carry inside, turning from the case. Maya looked around the store one last time before leaving. Noah was behind the counter, speaking with a young man who was clearly a first-time jewelry buyer, guiding him patiently through different options without a hint of condescension. Emily was kneeling beside an elderly customer, helping her fasten a bracelet with the same care she would give a celebrity client. James stood at the entrance, holding the door open for a mother and her teenage daughter, offering them both a respectful nod as they stepped inside. The scene filled Maya with a quiet pride. Not the pride of ego, but the kind that comes from seeing your values reflected back at you in the actions of others. The store was no longer defined by what had happened earlier. It was defined by how it had responded, and that was what she would carry forward. As she walked toward the door, her phone buzzed in her blazer pocket. It was Emma again, forwarding screenshots of headlines. Black CEO confronts discrimination in her own store, and fires manager on the spot. Hashtag Luminary Justice, trends nationwide. Viral video shows, powerful lesson in leadership and inclusion. There were interview requests from major networks. think pieces already emerging on the importance of representation in luxury retail, and hundreds of customer messages pledging renewed loyalty to Luminary Gems. Maya typed a quick reply. "We'll respond tomorrow. Tonight belongs to the team," stepping outside. She paused for a moment, taking in the shifting sounds of the district, laughter from a rooftop bar, the thrum of music spilling from a cafe, the distant hum of traffic. She walked to her waiting Prius, the same car she'd driven through years of startup chaos, the same car that had carried her to every unannounced store visit, every trade show, every late-night design session, sliding into the driver's seat. She didn't feel the need to switch it for something flashier. The car was part of her story, a reminder that substance mattered more than show. As she drove through the streets, she thought of how quickly a single day could change the trajectory of a company. The videos from Wynwood were already reshaping public perception of Luminary Gems, not as an untouchable luxury brand, but as a standard-bearer for dignity in the retail world. And while she knew social media attention could be fleeting, the deeper impact was in the internal shift. Vanessa and Claudia's exit was only the beginning. The real work would be in ensuring no customer, no matter their background, ever walked into a Luminary Gems store and felt what she had felt that morning, pulling up to a red light. She glanced at her locket in the rearview mirror and made a silent promise to her grandmother. The brand would not just be known for its designs, but for the way it made people feel. The light turned green, and she drove on, the Miami skyline rising against the deepening sky. By the time she reached the causeway, her phone was vibrating non-stop in her bag. But she left it there. Tonight wasn't about press cycles or public relations strategies. It was about reflection. She thought of the look on Emily's face when she'd been promoted, the way Noah's voice had steadied when she entrusted him with the store, the straight-backed nod James had given when she commended him for his integrity. These were the moments that built a legacy, not the headlines, but the lives changed in quiet, lasting ways. She imagined Noah introducing inclusivity training to his team, Emily's designs finally getting the recognition they deserved, James mentoring new hires on how to balance security with humanity. Each of them would carry forward the culture she fought to protect, multiplying the impact far beyond Wynwood. As she merged onto the highway, the city lights blurred into streaks of gold and white, and she allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Today had started as a routine check-in and ended as a defining moment, not just for the store, not just for the brand, but for herself as a leader. She had turned prejudice into a teachable moment, arrogance into accountability, and silence into a rallying cry for change. Somewhere out there, people were watching the viral clips, debating, sharing, arguing, but she hoped that at least some of them were seeing the bigger truth, that leadership is not about the title you hold, but about the values you refuse to compromise. Pulling into her driveway, she parked the Prius and sat for a moment, the engine ticking softly as it cooled. The night air was warm, carrying the faint scent of the sea, and she thought of all the unannounced visits still ahead, all the stories yet to be written in the halls of Luminary Gems. She stepped out, locking the car, and as she walked toward her front door, she knew that tomorrow the work would begin again. The training programs, the internal audits, the conversations with managers across all 18 states. It would be a long road, but it would be worth it. Because today wasn't just a confrontation. It was a course correction. It was a promise, made in front of customers and cameras alike, that Luminary Gems would be a place where every person belonged. And as long as she wore her grandmother's locket, Maya Johnson intended to keep that promise. If you enjoyed this story, like, share, and subscribe. Comment where you're watching from. Thank you for listening.